I got a great question recently about when do I choose to use color versus when do I choose to use black and white when I'm taking photos. And so I'm going to dive into that today. My name is Zach Dobson. I'm a professional commercial and editorial photographer. I've been doing photography for over 20 years, and I want to share with you my love for photography and get people excited about going out and creating work. First of all, I almost always am taking photos in color, because that gives me the most options. And yes, I've been doing this long enough that most of the time when I'm out, I know if I want the image to be in color or black and white, but you don't have to decide that stuff on the spot. Just decide when you get back. Make it easier on yourself. There's no need to create these artificial barriers to creating. You don't have to decide everything in the moment. You don't have to know exactly what you're going to do. That being said, let's talk about how I decide ultimately which one I want. So the thing about color that I think a lot of people don't understand is color photography is not about taking pictures in color. It's about taking pictures of color. So if you're shooting in color and presenting something in color, the color should add something in some way. The color can be one of two things. It could be the subject. Color can be a subject on its own, or the color should provide more information in some way. If it doesn't do one of those two things, you probably don't need it in there, because photography at its core is shadow and light and form. So that's why black and white works so well, because it focuses on those things: shadow, light, form, whatever's happening in the image itself. If I know going in that's what I'm looking at, it's really about the light, it's really about the shadows, it's probably going to end up being in black and white. So here's an image I took over 10 years ago, and for the longest time I had it in black and white because I wanted this documentary sort of feel, and then I went back to the original file to export a new original, and I looked at it again in color for the first time in a while. And I felt like the color added some information, it added some richness and depth. You look on the spray paint of the hood of the car, and you really lose the lettering of that in black and white. It's visible, but it doesn't stand out as much as it does in color. There's also kind of this warm tone, this warm light, summer evening, and I like how that color just gives you more of a sense of the time and place. It helps you see that it's evening and what it feels like there at the time. This is another image, many years only existed in black and white out in public, and it has a lot of tone and contrast and textures in it, and one of my favorite photos. And when I went back and looked at it in color, it just had this added warmth that really created this feeling, and I really loved the feeling of it. Now, other times images in black and white can kind of lose depth because the color can create more depth between objects. And I think this is a good example of that. If I move it into color, now all of a sudden the bubbles really stick out because they've got these bright turquoise and magenta and orange, and you get more depth. And you throw in there the red color of the shirt is this like pop of color. So that's using that color as a compositional element where you're mostly looking at green tones, and then you've got this red that's an opposite color that really stands out. Now, am I thinking about all this when I'm taking the photos? No, I'm looking at the moment, and I might notice, oh, I like this in color, and I know the bubbles look good in color, but I'm not necessarily thinking about all of these details. That can be what your whole editing process is for. Now, here's when I didn't think the color really added anything to the image, and when I go to black and white, I like it better in black and white because it's about the shadow, it's about the form, it's about the contrast, and the color, if anything, I think diminishes how strong the image is, light and shadow wise. Again, here, sometimes having a monochromatic image, so monochromatic just means one color. A lot of times people think of it as black and white. Black and white is a monochrome image, but an image that's all blue like this is a monochrome image. But the blue, it's not that rich. It doesn't have that much depth or interest to it. So this one personally, I like better in black and white. It gets rid of that blue and allows you to really focus on the shadow and the form and how the shapes fit together in this image. Now this is one I definitely like the color better, again because of that warmth. The warmth really helps kind of create a tone and a mood, and that rich color of the red steel is really what drew my eye to this situation. The warmth of the red and the blue in the sky, and then the silver of both the fence and the building itself really has this kind of three color look to this image. So having a minimal color palette can really add, is a really good way to use color. So those are the main ways that I decide whether I want something in color or in black and white. Is the color a part of the subject? Does the color create depth? Is the color distracting? I'll just take it out. If you've got a nice composition and there's a big red truck behind that doesn't match the tone of your image, just switch it to black and white, and then you've got rid of that major distraction. Now, to me, some people might go in and change the color itself of the distracting element, but part of what I'm doing is, in my mind, creating a historical record, and I want everyone to know when they see my photos, this is what the scene looked like when I was there. So if you see a color, that's how the color looked. If you see the light, that's how the light looked. I leave power lines, I leave extraneous signs, I leave everything in because it was all there. I wouldn't want someone to go to a spot and be like, oh, there's all this like stuff in here that they just photoshopped out of the image. So that's why you'll often hear me saying, keep it real, because that's what I like, that's what I love to do. You do your own thing, your own way. I just want people to know when they see my images, that's what I saw in the moment. And people love to come at me with, well, you didn't see black and white in the moment. No, I didn't. But as we've covered, photography is first and foremost light, shadow, form, and color is just a compositional technique. So I'm showing you the light and the shadow and the form as I saw it. So that's all I got on this topic. Make sure to subscribe to get more videos like this. If you sign up for my newsletter in the comments, that is the best way to get all of the information that I'm putting out. I put it all in the newsletter once a week. You'll find out what new blog posts, videos, photo stories I'm doing, offers I have from partners. You will get it all there. So newsletter, link in bio, do that. Tell your friends. You're all the best. Keep it real.